There's an inner knowing that resonates within you, a subtle recognition that the familiar version of yourself is poised for a profound, energetic transformation. This isn't a physical shift, but a deep recalibration, a calling from your quantum field towards a future of elevated potential. It's a sense that the current patterns, the ingrained thoughts, the established identity you've inhabited for years are ready to be reevaluated. As you immerse yourself in these words, consider the presence of an invisible field around you, one that subtly yet powerfully shapes your reality and maintains you within familiar loops of thought and behavior. This invisible force field isn't merely an individual psychological construct. It reflects a deeper truth about how our realities, both personal and collective, are shaped. Imagine the subtle yet powerful influence of societal expectations, deeply ingrained cultural narratives, or even prevailing economic paradigms that subtly dictate what's considered possible or acceptable. Just as individuals find themselves cycling through familiar thought patterns, societies often adhere to established systems and beliefs, even when they no longer serve their highest good. This field, as quantum physicists suggest, is woven into the very fabric of our reality, operating at a level far beyond conscious thought. Have you ever observed how, despite earnest efforts to change, certain aspects of your life seem stubbornly resistant to alteration? Or perhaps you've noticed individuals who seemingly transform their lives overnight, while others grapple with the same challenges for decades. This paradox extends beyond personal struggle. Consider nations or organizations that enact policy shifts or strategic overhauls, yet the underlying issues persist, seemingly impervious to effort. It's as if attempting to mend the surface without addressing the fundamental field only reinforces the existing structure. The key to true transformation, both for individuals and for larger systems, lies in what quantum physicists describe as observer collapse, a phenomenon where the act of observation fundamentally changes the observed reality. Ancient mystics understood this as the death of the false self, a necessary dismantling of outdated perceptions and identities. This concept, far from being purely metaphorical, describes a measurable scientific moment where your consciousness literally shifts dimensions. The old self, with its inherent limitations and repetitive patterns, begins to dissolve at a quantum level. In this profound dissolution, the universe itself embarks on a remarkable reorganization, aligning with the new self that is emerging. Many people, however, never experience this profound shift because their approach to change is fundamentally misaligned with the principles of quantum mechanics. They strive to impose new habits upon an old identity, attempting to merely upgrade existing programs. This is akin to trying to tune a radio to a new station while simultaneously broadcasting the old frequency. The wisdom of ancient traditions, such as the Tibetan mystics who taught that you cannot pour new wine into old wineskins, resonates deeply with this observation. Modern neuroscience offers compelling validation for this ancient wisdom. Dr. Joe Dispenza's extensive research, often drawing from methodologies like those at the HeartMath Institute, demonstrates that when we genuinely release our old identity, our brain actively rewires itself in real time. The neural pathways that previously anchored us to old patterns begin to diminish while new networks form, aligning with our highest potential. However, a crucial insight often omitted from popular self-help narratives is that this quantum shift rarely occurs gradually. It isn't a product of sheer willpower or mere positive thinking. Instead, it manifests in a moment of profound and complete surrender, a state quantum physicists term quantum decoherence, where the old self effectively ceases to exist as a probability in the quantum field. This is not merely a philosophical notion, but a fundamental principle that explains why letting go is not just a spiritual concept, but a quantum necessity for accessing higher dimensions of existence and unlocking dormant potentials within ourselves and our collective systems. Every morning, as you awaken, you engage in an act far more profound than simply opening your eyes. You are actively collapsing infinite possibilities into a singular, tangible reality. Subconsciously, you are selecting which version of yourself will manifest in this dimension today. Yet, what often goes unrecognized is that each time you default to being the person you were yesterday, responding with the same emotional patterns, making decisions based on the same limiting beliefs, you are not just maintaining the status quo. You are actively creating a probability wave collapse that further entrenches you in that particular timeline. Consider the quantum field as a vast ocean of simultaneous possibilities. The version of you that is confident, abundant, and fulfilling your highest purpose exists right now in a state of superposition, alongside the version that is stuck, fearful, and repeating old patterns. Your consciousness, through the act of observation and choice, is what causes one possibility to actualize and the others to recede into the background. This is where ancient wisdom and cutting-edge science beautifully converge. The Vedic texts spoke of Maya, the illusion of the separate self, while Buddhist teachings elucidated anatta, the concept of non-self or the non-existence of a fixed identity. What these traditions understood millennia ago, quantum mechanics is now affirming in laboratories worldwide. Your identity, the person you believe yourself to be, is not an immutable entity. It is a dynamic composite of repeated thoughts, emotions, and behaviors that have forged what neuroscientists refer to as neural superhighways. These are deeply etched grooves in your brain that render certain patterns automatic, unconscious, and seemingly effortless. They are so deeply ingrained that they feel intrinsically you. The profound revelation is this: these neural superhighways, these patterns that appear so permanent and unchangeable, persist only because you continue to choose them. Their power is derived from the energy you continually invest in them through your attention, emotion, and identification. The precise moment you cease to identify with these patterns, something truly miraculous unfolds at the quantum level. The wave function that sustained that version of reality begins to decohere. The old self literally starts to dissolve, not as an act of destruction, but as a profound liberation. This is why every enduring spiritual tradition speaks of death and rebirth. This is why the archetypal hero's journey invariably involves a moment of complete surrender, a descent into the unknown, which is not merely metaphorical but quantum mechanical. The old self must undergo this dissolution for the new self to emerge from the infinite potential of the field. However, a common misconception is that letting go signifies a loss, a relinquishing of valuable parts of oneself. People often approach it with fear, resistance, and a sense of impending lack. But what if what you perceive as you is actually the most constrained, most limited iteration of your true essence? What you are letting go of is not your authentic self, but the self-imposed prison that has concealed it. You are not releasing your power, but rather the illusions that have obscured it. You are not surrendering your identity, but the false identity that has prevented your authentic self from fully shining through. 3 years ago, I found myself sitting in my car at 2 a.m. outside a 24-hour diner, tears streaming down my face, feeling as though they originated from the deepest recesses of my soul. I had just walked away from everything that had defined my perceived identity, my career, my relationship, my entire sense of self, everything that had provided me with security, success, and social acceptance. For months, I had felt an inexplicable pull, an inner knowing that the life I was living was profoundly misaligned with the person I was becoming. Yet, each time I contemplated making a change, my mind would be besieged by fears. What will people think? How will you survive? You're throwing your life away. That night in the parking lot, a profound realization dawned upon me. Those weren't my fears. They were the fears of the old version of myself, the version that craved external validation to feel worthy, that believed security stemmed from controlling outcomes, that equated my identity with my job, my relationships, my possessions. In that moment of complete breakdown, something extraordinary transpired. I ceased trying to strategize, to manage the situation, to project an image of strength. I simply let go completely, surrendering to the unknown with every fiber of my being. What unfolded next defied everything I thought I knew about how life works. Within weeks, opportunities materialized that I could not have possibly imagined. Individuals entered my life who were profoundly aligned with my authentic path. Resources appeared in ways that seemed almost magical, reflecting a universe reorganizing around my emergent truth. But the most profound change wasn't external, it was internal. I began to experience life from an entirely different frequency. Where anxiety once resided, excitement now blossomed. Where limitations had been perceived, an infinite expanse unfurled. Where separateness had been felt, a profound connection to something vast and loving now permeated my being. That's when I truly grasped what the mystics meant by death and rebirth. That's when I understood why every spiritual tradition emphasizes surrender as the gateway to liberation. That's when I discovered what quantum physicists mean when they state that observation changes reality. The old me didn't merely evolve into the new me. The old me dissolved, and the new me emerged from an entirely different level of consciousness. This is not merely my personal narrative. It is the universal story of every soul that has experienced authentic transformation. And if these words resonate within you, it is a calling for it to become your story too. Because what was revealed to me in that parking lot, what the quantum field unveiled in that moment of complete surrender, is what I've dedicated my life to sharing. The path is not about becoming someone new, but about remembering who you have always been, beneath the accumulated layers of conditioning and fear. And that remembering invariably begins with letting go. If my story has ignited a spark of recognition in your soul, if you felt that stirring of possibility within your own quantum field, then you are ready to delve deeper into these mysteries. You are ready to understand the hidden mechanics of reality that most people never discover. So, how do you recognize when this quantum shift is beginning to manifest in your own life? The universe has its own profound ways of communicating with us, through subtle signs, compelling synchronicities, and gentle shifts in the very fabric of our perceived reality. However, many individuals overlook these crucial signals because they are conditioned to anticipate only dramatic, overt changes. The initial sign I often refer to as divine dissatisfaction. You begin to experience a profound restlessness with aspects of your life that once brought contentment. Your professional role might be stable, but it no longer ignites your passion. Your relationships might be comfortable, yet they fail to inspire growth or deeper connection. Your daily routines start to feel hollow, even though, superficially, nothing has fundamentally changed. This is not depression. It is your soul outgrowing its current container. You might observe yourself questioning assumptions you previously accepted without thought. Why am I pursuing this career? Why do I reside in this particular place? Why do I spend my time with these specific individuals? These are not rebellious thoughts. They are the stirrings of your consciousness preparing for a profound expansion. Another powerful indicator is what quantum physicists term reality glitches. You might begin to notice recurring number sequences 1111, 333, 555 appearing with unusual frequency. You might find yourself thinking of someone intensely just moments before they call or text you. Dreams might become extraordinarily vivid, feeling more tangible than your waking life experiences. These are not mere coincidences. They are tangible evidence that your consciousness is beginning to operate from a higher dimensional frequency, a subtle atonement to the interconnectedness of all things. Pay close attention to how your physical body responds to different people, environments, and situations. The old self might have suppressed these signals, pushed through discomfort, or rationalized staying in misaligned circumstances. But as you attune to higher frequencies, your body transforms into an exquisitely sensitive guidance system. Experiences that foster expansion feel light, energizing, and spacious. Conversely, those that denote contraction feel heavy, draining, and restrictive. This somatic feedback becomes an invaluable compass. You might also perceive that old patterns are intensifying before they ultimately dissolve. This phenomenon is what consciousness researcher David Hawkins referred to as the final purgation. Your habitual ways of thinking and reacting might become more pronounced, more conspicuous, even more uncomfortable. This is not a regression. It is a clear sign that these patterns are relinquishing their unconscious hold on you, becoming visible precisely so they can be released. A further profound sign is the emergence of what I call quantum mentors. Individuals begin to enter your life who powerfully reflect your highest potential back to you. Books seem to fall into your hands at precisely the opportune moment. Conversations unfold that feel divinely orchestrated, imbued with timely insights. Opportunities present themselves that align perfectly with your deepest values and authentic gifts. The universe, in essence, begins to reorganize itself around your emerging truth, creating a supportive ecosystem for your transformation. But here's the ultimate sign that confirms you're in the deepest part of the quantum shift. You begin to experience what mystics throughout history have called the dark night of the soul. Everything that previously imbued your life with meaning now feels empty.
Everything you once relied upon for security feels profoundly unstable. Every external source you turn to for identity now feels foreign and detached. This is not a breakdown. It is a breakthrough. It is your consciousness expanding beyond the restrictive boundaries of the old self. It is the caterpillar dissolving completely within the cocoon before emerging as a butterfly. It is the most sacred, most indispensable stage of the transformation process. However, there's a critical aspect I haven't yet revealed, a piece of information that profoundly alters how you navigate this quantum shift. There's a specific juncture in the letting go process where most individuals retract. It's a threshold that, once traversed, renders the transformation irreversible. And at this threshold, you will confront a choice that will determine whether you complete the shift or remain perpetually suspended between two worlds. Ancient alchemists referred to this as the nigredo, the blackening, the stage where everything must dissolve before it can be reborn. Modern neuroscience has identified this as the neural gap, the interstitial space between the death of old neural pathways and the genesis of new ones. Quantum physicists recognize it as the collapse point, the precise moment where one reality concludes and another commences. But what often goes unstated is that this moment is not singular. It recurs multiple times throughout the transformation, each iteration demanding deeper faith, greater trust, and a heightened willingness to embrace the unknown. And there's yet another factor, a profound principle that will determine not only whether you successfully navigate this quantum shift, but also the speed and grace with which you traverse it, and the completeness with which you embody the new version of yourself. This principle is woven into the deepest teachings of every mystical tradition, encoded within the most advanced theories of quantum mechanics, and vividly reflected in the transformation stories of every individual who has successfully journeyed from the old self to the authentic self. What is this principle? What is this secret that differentiates those who achieve profound transformation from those who become trapped in the liminal space? It is the key that unlocks the door to your highest timeline. To truly understand its power, you first need to comprehend precisely what transpires within your brain, your body, and your energy field when you genuinely let go. Because once you apprehend the underlying mechanism, once you understand the intrinsic process, the fear associated with letting go will dissipate forever. When you truly release the old self, when you cease to maintain, protect, and strive to improve the limited version of who you believe you are, Your nervous system undergoes what neuroscientists term coherent reorganization. Every system within your body begins to operate at a significantly higher level of efficiency and harmony. Firstly, your stress response system undergoes a complete recalibration. The chronic state of fight or flight, often triggered by the incessant need to control outcomes, protect the ego, and uphold a false sense of security, begins to dissolve. Your cortisol levels normalize, your heart rate variability increases, and your immune system is fortified. More profoundly, you begin to experience a deep sense of inner peace that is no longer contingent upon external circumstances. Recall my story about that night in the parking lot. The months that followed were among the most peaceful of my life. Not because external conditions were perfect, but because I had ceased battling against reality. I had stopped exhausting myself attempting to force outcomes and depleting my energy maintaining an identity that was no longer authentic. Your cognitive function also undergoes a dramatic transformation. When you are no longer expending vast amounts of mental energy to uphold old patterns, defend the ego, and suppress authentic impulses, your mind becomes extraordinarily clear, creative, and intuitive. Problems that once appeared insurmountable suddenly yield obvious solutions. Creative ideas flow effortlessly, and decision-making becomes remarkably simple, because you are now aligned with your inherent truth rather than your fears. Dr. Bruce Lipton's pioneering research on epigenetics unequivocally demonstrates that when we fundamentally alter our beliefs about who we are, we literally change which genes are expressed in our bodies. The genes associated with stress, accelerated aging, and disease become less active, while those linked to vitality, regeneration, and robust health become more active. You are not merely changing your psychology, you are fundamentally altering your biology, influencing your very genetic expression. This scientific understanding has profound implications for collective well-being, suggesting that a shift in collective belief systems could, in theory, influence the biological resilience and health of entire populations. But perhaps the most profound benefit is what spiritual traditions refer to as self-realization. The direct, experiential knowing of your true nature, unencumbered by conditioning, limitations, or narratives about who you are supposed to be. This is not merely an intellectual concept, it is a living reality experienced in every moment. You begin to live from what mystics call beginner's mind, a state of perpetual freshness, wonder, and openness to possibility. You cease to approach life from the perspective of past wounds and future anxieties. Instead, you respond to each moment from a place of pure presence, unadulterated authenticity, and unconditional love. Your relationships transform because you are no longer seeking external validation, security, or identity from others to complete yourself. You love from a place of inherent fullness rather than emptiness, and you give from an abundance that transcends scarcity. Just as in my own journey, opportunities begin to appear that are perfectly aligned with your authentic gifts and deepest values. Financial abundance flows more readily because you are no longer obstructing it with limiting beliefs about worthiness. Health improves because you are no longer creating internal conflict that manifests as illness. Creativity explodes because you are no longer censoring your authentic expression. Crucially, you develop what I term quantum trust, an unshakable faith in the inherent intelligence and benevolent nature of life itself. You know at the deepest level that everything is unfolding for your highest good. You recognize that the universe is actively conspiring to help you fulfill your highest potential. You understand that letting go is not about losing anything, it is about gaining everything. Pause for a moment. Really pause. What if everything you've been taught about personal change, about growth, about becoming your best self has been fundamentally inverted? What if the true path to your highest potential isn't about accumulating more, doing more, or striving to become more, but rather about releasing, surrendering, and letting go of everything that isn't authentically you? What if the struggles you've encountered, the resistance you felt, the seeming impossibility of achieving lasting change? What if all of this has occurred because you've been trying to transform while clinging tenaciously to the very identity that needed to be released? Consider your own life for a moment. How much energy are you currently expending trying to manage, control, and improve external circumstances, all while maintaining an essentially unchanged internal state? How much effort are you pouring into altering your external world, yet keeping your internal landscape exactly as it is? What might happen if you simply stopped? What if you just let go? Not of your responsibilities, not of your care for others, not of your authentic desires and dreams, but of the deeply ingrained need to be who you think you're supposed to be. What if the person you're so strenuously trying to become is, in fact, a smaller, more limited version of who you already are at your core? What if, beneath all the layers of conditioning, all the fears, all the narratives of limitation and scarcity, there exists a version of you that is already whole, already perfect, already profoundly connected to infinite intelligence and boundless love? This isn't mere philosophical speculation. This is the direct experience reported by every mystic throughout history. This is the profound reality towards which quantum physics is consistently pointing. This is the transformation that becomes possible the moment you cease trying to improve the false self and instead permit the true self to emerge. The caterpillar does not endeavor to become a better caterpillar. It does not attend caterpillar therapy, read caterpillar self-help books, or set caterpillar goals.
It surrenders so completely to the process of metamorphosis that its entire being dissolves, and something entirely new emerges, something that was always its inherent potential but could never manifest while it insisted on remaining a caterpillar. What if your personal struggles, your pervasive dissatisfaction, your deep longing for something more are not indicators that something is fundamentally wrong with you? What if they are, in fact, powerful signals that something is so profoundly right with you that your soul is no longer willing to settle for anything less than your full potential? What if this very moment, as you read these words, feel these possibilities, and sense this truth, is your consciousness preparing for the most beautiful and transformative journey of your life? The sole question is, are you ready to trust the process? Are you ready to let go of who you think you are and uncover who you have always been? What I've shared so far is merely the bedrock, the foundation for something far deeper, far more profound, and vastly more transformative than most people can ever conceive. There are levels to this quantum shift that extend beyond personal transformation, opening up dimensions of consciousness that connect you to abilities, insights, and experiences often considered impossible. I'm referring to what the ancients called cities, the natural abilities that emerge when consciousness is no longer constrained by identification with the separate self. I'm talking about what modern physicists are discovering regarding the fundamental nature of consciousness and its intrinsic role in shaping reality at the quantum level. These are not exclusive supernatural powers possessed by a select few. These are the natural capabilities that become accessible when you are no longer expending all your energy to maintain a false identity. They are the inherent birthright of consciousness itself, available to anyone who completes the journey from the ego-driven self to the authentic self. The question is, how far are you willing to go? How deep are you willing to dive? How completely are you willing to release everything you think you know about who you are and what is truly possible? Because what comes next will challenge every assumption you've ever held about the nature of reality, the power of consciousness, and your role as a conscious creator in this quantum universe. As we conclude our time together today, I want to leave you with a whisper from the quantum field. A truth your soul already knows, but your mind is just beginning to grasp.
The version of you that began watching this has undergone a subtle yet significant shift. Something has stirred, awakened, and been activated at a cellular, energetic, and quantum level. You may not feel dramatically different. The change might be so subtle your conscious mind barely registers it. Yet your quantum field knows. Your higher self knows. The universe knows. And here's the mystery I offer you. The fact that you found this video, that you stayed until this moment, that these words resonate within your being right now, none of this is coincidence. Your quantum field has been orchestrating this moment for longer than you realize. There are forces, intelligences, and aspects of yourself that exist beyond the boundaries of time and space, guiding you toward this recognition, this remembering, this moment of choosing between the old you and the true you. The question that will echo in your consciousness long after this video concludes is profound. What if the quantum shift isn't something that is going to happen to you, but something that is already happening through you? What if every moment of dissatisfaction, every stirring of possibility, every recognition of truth has been preparing you for a transformation that has already begun? What if letting go isn't something you do, but something you are? What if the old you was never truly real in the first place? What if who you think you are is merely a temporary dream, and who you really are is the dreamer awakening? The answers to these questions are not found through more thinking, more analyzing, or more figuring out. They are found in the expansive space of pure awareness that opens when you cease striving to know and instead embrace the willingness to not know. They are discovered in the silence between thoughts, in the peace that transcends understanding, in the love that exists prior to all experience. This, indeed, is where the real journey commences. If you have stayed with me until this moment, if you have permitted these words to penetrate not just your mind but your very being, then you recognize that something irreversible has been set in motion. The quantum shift we have discussed is no longer merely a concept. It is a living reality beginning to unfold within your life. The old you that awoke this morning operated from one level of consciousness. The you that is receiving these words right now has access to dimensions of possibility that were previously beyond your awareness. This is not metaphorical, it is quantum mechanical. This activation is like planting a seed. What determines whether that seed blossoms into the full flowering of your authentic self is what you do in the moments, hours, and days that follow. The quantum field is calling you deeper. Your highest timeline is beckoning you forward. The version of yourself that exists beyond all limitations is ready to emerge fully into this reality. Welcome to the quantum reflex. Welcome to the reflection of your highest self. Welcome to the beginning of the most beautiful journey of your life. The next level of your awakening is just one click away.